Maud, starring Beatrice Arthur, and Kojak, starring Telly Savalas, will return next Saturday night at their regular times on most of these stations.
I thought you were like transforming or something to a werewolf.
Yeah, I'm only 1/4 werewolf on my grandmother's side.
Quarter?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, it's kind of a letdown.
Well, what were you expecting?
You know, I was expecting like a typical kind of werewolf, you know.
Okay. What do you mean typical werewolf?
You know, like with the pointy ears and fangs and a muzzle and...
No.
You supposed to look like a dog.
You are clinging to an old stereotype.
What?
Yes.
Stereotype?
That is a stereotype. Boo! You know, some of our finest entertainers were werewolves, okay? Robin Williams, werewolf. Flip Wilson, werewolf. Penny Marshall, werewolf. Also Squiggy.
Squiggy too, huh?
Yes.
So I guess you have to attack me now because that's what werewolves do. I mean,
I'm disappointed in you once again. You are clinging to a stereotype.
I know one thing about werewolves, and that's that they attack people.
You know what? Here's you. Here's you, okay? You're in a box. You and the rest of America, you're in a werewolf box, okay?
Come on.
Everyone else?
You know I'm not that close-minded.
People who are enlightened?
I'm not that close-minded.
Yeah.
Kabir, you know me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what? I thought I did.
Oh, come on. Hey, I'm sorry, Kabir. Ugh, you really stink, you know that? Being a werewolf really affected the way you smell.
It didn't affect my smell.
The most popular exhibition in the history of the Smithsonian Institution is coming to Cleveland. Starting June 1st, the Cleveland Health Education Museum presents an exclusive showing of MASH, Binding Up the Wounds. From the swamp and operating room to actual props, memorabilia, and photos, this exhibition documents how the Korean War's actual MASH units aided development of today's life-saving trauma centers. The MASH exhibition, supported by your favorites at Channel 43.
Hi, thanks for tuning in to Up Late. I'm Kabir, your host, and tonight we're going to be looking for the full hour. It's a color teeny about Helltown. And if you're wondering, well, what is Helltown? Or if you're thinking, ooh, Helltown, let me fire up the Betamax and record this. Well, I must tell you, we're going to dispel myths, and we're also going to explain them. And then maybe at the end of the half hour, there's actually going to be more myths that will terrify you, and we've done more harm than good. I don't know. We're going to find out. Right now, here's a look a little bit at what Helltown kind of looks like today. So my guest tonight is going to help me explain some of the madness of what you just saw, which probably isn't really madness at all. It just looks cool. Please welcome from Boston Township, Nick Janigian. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, good. Thanks for being here. And you actually saw a story that we did about Helltown a few months ago, and you were compelled to write in because, tell me, you have a very specific, special connection to that part of Ohio.
Yeah, so I live on Stanford Road, and I own a property across the street on the corner of West Hines Hill and Boston Mills Road, which used to be a school and then eventually became a church, and has been kind of subject to the same myths and speculations of being haunted. So.
Yeah. So now Stanford Road, for people who don't know, is the one that most of it is blocked off because it's not really a road anymore. It doesn't exist. And people love to sneak up there, and there's maybe a little bit of like an old barn or something, right? And people think that, oh, well, this is where all this chaotic, ghostly activity happened and stuff like that. So you live at the developed part of that. There's you, and I think you've got two neighbors.
Yep.
You're all normal folks.
It's myself, and then I have one house, one neighbor to the north of me, and then a neighbor behind me, and then a neighbor on Boston Mills Road.
So how did you decide, well, you know what, in my spare time, I'm going to buy this building that used to be a school and a church?
Yeah, so I was working in Chicago at the time, actually, and the property came up for sale. It wasn't public, but I had been reaching out to the attorney, actually, that was on the shell company that the investors had kind of formed to acquire the property, and they agreed to sell to me. And I bought it in January of 2019, so it's been about 3 years now. About a year after I bought the church, an estate offered the house for sale.
Oh.
And that was also a non-public deal. So I reached out to the estate who had inherited the house, and they had agreed to sell me the house on Stanford about a year after I bought the church. So.
Yeah. And you just decided, I mean, I know you're from around here originally, but you just decided, like, yeah, it's a cool building, I'm going to buy it.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of funny. It's like it's a big project, and it's a lot of work, and I wish I was a bit older with a lot more money so I could just kind of, you know, flick my fingers and kind of make it.
You fix this.
And, but unfortunately, I don't have that luxury. But I saw the building, and I knew that whoever was going to buy this next, it probably wasn't going to change hands for a very long time, if ever. Land acquisition in the national park, it's usually going to a nonprofit, and if it goes to an individual, people tend to kind of stay in those homes for life. So there's very few properties that change hands. When I saw something this cool, I realized that maybe my only opportunity to get it. So ended up making him an offer, and the church went out of business, so to speak, in 2014. And they, the national park at the time, was very much so okay with the church having the property and being able to operate it as a church for years. And there was concern that if the building changed use to residential or to an apartment or something like that, that maybe the park would come in and try and take it. But for the most part, I don't think they're interested in it. So
what do you plan to do with the building?
So today it's zoned residential. So my plans for the next 5-10 years is going to be primarily a residence. So,
okay.
It would be nice down the line at some point to see it turned into like an event center or like a short-term rental. So the Stanford house is down the street. That's owned by the park but operated by the Conservancy. Right. They rent that building out every night, and it's usually fairly busy there. So there's I think a lot of demand and interest in being able to spend time in the national park overnight. Sure. And this, I think, building is a perfect opportunity to do that. So.
And how old is the building? It's pretty old, right?
Yeah, I believe it was built in 1908.
Wow.
It's either 1908 or 1911. There's a couple different years I've seen, but yeah, it's pretty old.
So you were saying maybe residential, something like that. What about, are you at all interested in converting it into a satanic church?
Oh, yeah.
For cult activity?
Well, I've had people joke like, why don't you turn it into a film studio or you know, like a special like filming location? But you know, it's really a beautiful building both inside and out, and you don't really see many buildings 100 years old with 12-foot ceilings. So it's really nice to go in there and see like an opened modern space. So I think it would make like a great home, and you know, eventually a great place for like events and stuff like that, like a barbecue or something.
A lot of different things, different ways you could go with it. And the reason, of course, that I bring up the satanic part of it, your church often gets confused with another church, and both of them have gotten this mythology from Helltown onto them. So tell me a little bit about, well, there's the church in Peninsula, near downtown Peninsula, where everyone goes, that's got an upside down cross, essentially, which is just a design feature.
Yeah, it's just you know, Gothic revival architecture from the turn of the century, you know, or a little bit earlier than that, I think, like you would see on college campuses out east, right? It's there's nothing nefarious about it. But once the myths kind of got you know, once the myths started rolling about Helltown and Satan activity and Satan worshipers, you know, people kind of look for things to fit their perspective, and seeing a church with an upside down cross was kind of a fitting, you know.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's unusual. Of course, it makes sense. It's something's wrong here.
Yeah.
And then your church, as far as you know, has never had any of this weird activity that people describe. But you were saying some of the pastors over the years, maybe they didn't help things.
Yeah.
They didn't help the reputation. Talk about what you've heard about some of that.
So there's a couple stories. I know that when the church was starting to go out of business around 2012 to 2014, you know, it didn't look its best, right? It's just people would come up to the building and try to investigate it, you know, as part of their tour of Helltown. And there are stories that scary men would kind of tell them to get lost, you know, which I've always thought as the pastor or one of the neighbors kind of telling someone to get lost. But you know, as far as I know, there's never been a Satan worshiping cult in the building, so it would be news to me.
Of course, yeah. So tell me what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so this is a picture from not this past summer, but the year before. This is actually almost all gutted out now, but this is what the building looked like right when I bought it. So I bought the building, and the church had kind of left everything as is when they moved out 3 years before.
Wow.
And that's kind of what I got. You know,
I mean, it looks like if you wanted to, somebody could walk right in, turn the lights on, and have a service with this photo. It's not in bad shape or anything.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was in good shape. I would say the vacancy had kind of accumulated a lot of deferred maintenance and accumulation of like mold and dust and everything. Gotcha. So, but for the most part, yeah, I mean, the structure, the building itself was in decent shape. You know,
that's pretty good. Good bones, as they say, right?
Yeah.
And then if we're looking here, talk about this.
This is the second floor. So they had it divided into 3 rooms on the north side, and then just a big open room on the south side. And I kind of ripped that all out. Was a sub ceiling in before, if you see where it's white and then where it changes to pink.
Oh, okay.
So they had tried to get their heating bills down by just putting as much insulation as possible vertically, and so we ripped all that out. We took out about 80 cubic yards of trash, which is those 2 big dumpsters. If you saw that one picture I sent of the dumpster.
That looks like this. This is all insulation or just debris in general?
Just debris, furniture, coffee maker, like anything you can think of that people would leave behind.
Wow.
And that's about half of what we took out.
So they didn't really take anything with them. They just shut the lights off, locked the door, and walked.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Now, this photo that you sent me, what's the origin of this, and what are we looking at here?
So this is a photo I saw in a like a memory collection. I think this is around 1976 that this picture is taken. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know, in its prime, I think, when they had, you know, still a very active membership. The park had just, you know, been formed a couple years before.
Sure.
So, you know, the whole community wasn't necessarily gone at that point. But
gotcha.
yeah, so this is there's a history book about the valley written by or written in a partnership with the gentleman who runs the library in Peninsula and the Historical Society.
Okay.
And this is something they put together, and my building's on page 47, I think. And
wow.
this is a picture of the building before it had any paint on it.
Okay.
So we know it's pretty old. So I couldn't give you a date, but maybe the 20s or the 30s or something like that.
Cool.
So this church that you see on top, I believe it burned down.
Oh my.
Or it was knocked down, one of the two, and they were looking for a new home, and it's right up the road. It's that building. I think the foundation still might be there, but it's near the Conservancy headquarters on Hines Hill Road there.
Okay.
And they were looking for a new place to, call home for their church congregation, and they spent, I think, 3 years actually fixing up the Hines Hill property into what became the Boston Community Church.
Oh,
So-
very cool. And then this is what it looks like now.
Yeah, so this is a picture from September, I think, where that's when I had the dumpster out there, and basically that was round 2 of cleaning everything out. So
I mean, it doesn't look that bad. It looks just like if you took out the belfry and put maybe shutters, it would just look like a cool house.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
yeah, it's kind of strange, because it's like people look at it and they think it looks like a church, and like if you type in church on an iPhone, the icon looks just like it, but it was built as a school.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I mean, I think generally the structure's in really good shape. The paint, on the other hand, it's like a moisture or masonry paint, so it's had the effect of trapping moisture into the building over the last 50 years.
Yeah.
So currently working with a couple contractors, figuring out is it best to take the paint off and put like a better sealant on there,
Sure.
Or is there a better way to kind of protect what's already on there from deterioration, because the whole building's actually made out of concrete.
Oh wow.
From the Sears Craftsman rusticated concrete that they used to put out in 06 ish is when that really became popular. Do you remember probably seeing when Sears used to ship you a home, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Sears Kit Homes. I see those.
All of that stuff. So this was just a product you'd get out of the Sears catalog.
Right.
And instead of building it out of wood, they took sand and rock out of the Cuyahoga River probably, and made these concrete blocks, and basically everything you see is this kind of rock face concrete block.
Wow.
Stacked up into what it is.
So it must be pretty sturdy.
I hope. The lifespan of the concrete is supposed to be about 100 years, so we're kind of there now.
Yeah.
So there's some spalling and stuff like that, but some of the blocks could last 400 or 500 years, right? Okay. So there's some touch-up work that needs to be done, but for the most part, I don't think it's coming down anytime soon. So.
That's good. I've talked to some of your neighbors already, of course, as you know, because they've connected us. You still get visitors coming and maybe, for lack of a better term, troublemakers at all hours who think this is the thing and they want to come and explore, and they kind of bother you guys. So maybe talk a little bit about how that must be impacting you. I'm sure you don't love that's happening.
Well, I would resent it a lot more if I had a family, in the house. But and I will say that over the last year or so, the Park Service, the park rangers, and in partnership with the Peninsula Police, have really done a very good job at what I would call just deterrence for stuff like that. But essentially these people had their homes either acquired or sold to the park, and the park ran out of money to knock them down, or had plans to use them for different purposes, and essentially boarded up all these homes. So you walked down Stanford 10 years ago, and there was all these boarded up homes, and you're just you're kind of like, oh, what happened here, right?
Yeah.
Because Stanford, if you walk or bike up it, which you can do, goes right to Brandywine Falls. So it's a very popular area today still with all of the tourists that are coming to the park. So it's something that you're very likely to see if you come to the national park. So a lot of those houses have been knocked down. I think the last structure that's standing is, on Stanford at least, is the Lindley Barn, which I believe is due to be demolished at some point. But where, if you walk on Stanford today and you see an area with a lot of young trees that look like they were just planted, they basically just planted them over what used to be a bunch of homes right there. So you can look at old satellite images of Peninsula in Boston and see what it looked like with all these houses up there. But the last resident on Stanford, I think he's only been gone out of the area for maybe 10 years or so. So it's not a tremendous amount of time.
No.
So,
No.
but
And now you're coming in. You're the new generation who's at the end of the street,
yeah.
fixing things up.
Well, so our two houses kind of escaped land acquisition, I think, because they were fairly new.
Oh, okay.
And they were kind of out of the way. But pretty much everything past the Stanford house was,
It's just gone.
was
except for that
purchased.
barn.
Yeah, except for the barn.
So if people are really super curious, they're still allowed to walk up there.
Yeah, you can walk up
past
there.
the gate, but you can't drive up, obviously.
Yeah, you can't drive up there, and you can walk on Stanford Road pretty much all the way to Brandywine Falls, and it's what used to be, a road that people lived on.
Yeah.
But parts of it are kind of falling apart, because it's a road that hasn't been maintained in
Of course.
decades, and Sagamore Hills was the first to kind of close it off, despite the fact that they actually had a resident living on there, and then Boston finally said, we're not paying to maintenance this road. There's no one here that
Makes no sense.
So
Yeah.
so they shut it down.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you're there and keeping an eye on things, and hopefully people will see this and realize it's not a place for spelunking unless you're going up to the falls and you want to enjoy some nature. But beyond that, don't come in and cause any trouble.
Right. There's really nothing exciting there now. It's just it's not exciting if you're looking for ghosts, right? But it's exciting if you're there to see, trees and
Sure.
the rivers and streams and all of the wildlife that's kind of out there. So.
And there's nothing haunted in your church except for like the ghost of Sherrod Brown, maybe, or
right.
something like that.
Well, I don't know. I haven't had any experiences yet while I've been in the church. But it's this old, with old buildings, you hear like a pipe moving, and who knows, right? But
I'm not sure. Okay.
But yeah.
Well, if anything supernatural happens, you come back and see us.
Oh yeah.
Let us know.
You'll be the first to know.
We'll bring one of those things out that they have on ghost hunters and track the activity.
The heat camera.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't remember the name of it. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, Nick Janigian, thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the great photos. And that's it for this edition of Up Late. Stay tuned right now for coming up next, Joe and Sons, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Ron Duker of Ohio Edison. The Boy Scouts Beef Barbecue and Open House will be held Saturday, October 11th from noon to 7 p.m. right here at Camp Manitowoc in Peninsula, Ohio. There'll be lots of good food and good things to see and do. Come join us on Saturday, October 11th. For ticket information, call the Boy Scouts at 535-7881. That's 535-7881.
Big GM
コンサイズコンポ
Big GM
テクニクス
Big GM
コンサイズコンポコンサイズコンポコンサイズコンポ僕は大きいのが好き
小さなコンサイスコンポ、大きなビッグ GM500、コンポはどちらも。
Hi, this is Ed George. For over 50 years, the Tangier has been dedicated to making your wedding dream come true.